In 1946, Finland ceded the territory of Karelia to the Soviet Union under the peace treaty that followed World War II. 2 years later, after striking gold in Lapland, Finnish ex-commando Atami Korpi, a man known for refusing to die, set out to return to his hometown. After returning to the site where his family was killed in the war, Atami dismantles his old home, loads it onto a truck, and sets off to rebuild it somewhere safe in their honor. But when the Red Army commander who murdered his family comes back determined to finish the job, Atami becomes the target of a relentless, brutal cross-country chase. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more movie recaps like this. Now, let's dive in. Atami was stopped at a Soviet border station. The soldiers thoroughly inspected his truck while he waited inside with his dog. He handed over his passport, remained silent, and watched as the inspection dragged on. After completing their search, the officer stamped his documents and waved him through. Crossing into Karelia, Atami entered the land where his family had been brutally murdered during the war. He stopped the truck in front of what remained of his old home. His dog ran toward the empty doghouse as Atami stepped inside. The house was covered in dust and cobwebs, frozen in time. He slowly touched the furniture, grief heavy in his eyes, memories flooding back. In one room, he found a family portrait, and the weight of loss finally broke him. Overcome with emotion, he dismantled the house piece by piece, loading the wooden logs into his truck. He was determined to rebuild the home somewhere safe, honoring those he had lost. After setting the remaining structure on fire, he climbed into the truck and drove away. Meanwhile, deep in Siberia, the Red Army became aware of Atami's presence on their soil. In response, KGB agents released Igor Dragunov, a brutal operative whose unit had once burned an entire village to the ground. During that massacre, Dragunov's men slaughtered over 100 civilians, including 2 young boys and their mother, chopping them to pieces with shovels. That family had been Atami's. Atami had once been a feared Finnish commander who took revenge by killing hundreds of Red Army soldiers, becoming a living legend. The Soviets now wanted that legend erased. Dragunov was offered freedom and wealth in exchange for hunting Atami down and destroying the myths surrounding him. As Atami traveled west toward the Finnish border, Dragunov and his soldiers intercepted him. One of the men approached the truck and demanded Atami's passport. After confirming his identity, Dragunov ordered his execution. One soldier walked past Atami toward another man at the front of the truck. He lit a bottle filled with fire and advanced. In an instant, Atami flung the truck door open, knocking the attacker unconscious. He slammed the accelerator, crushing the soldier behind him, then surged forward, sending the broken body flying into Dragunov's vehicle. Atami continued driving, dragging the soldier trapped at the front before smashing him against another vehicle. He spared Dragunov, unaware that this man was responsible for his family's deaths. Dragunov regrouped and sent a motor truck in pursuit. As the chase began, Atami grabbed a rifle from a fallen soldier, only to realize it was unloaded. Struggling to reload while driving, he handed the weapon to a terrified captive soldier to fix the bullets. The man's fear was obvious as his hands shook. Atami instead took a smaller handgun. Atami suddenly slammed on the brakes, forcing Dragunov's men to stop. The captive soldier leapt from the truck and was immediately gunned down by his comrades. Using the distraction, Atami opened fire, killing several soldiers, then shot out the tires of Dragunov's van and the man riding beside him. Once again, he spared Dragunov and drove away. Dragunov waited for reinforcements on motorcycles and resumed the chase. Atami took a different route, but they stayed on him. He fired at one rider, but the helmet deflected the bullets. The biker returned fire, grazing Atami's jaw and nearly forcing him off the road, though he managed to regain control. One rider climbed onto the roof of the truck and fired down through the open door. Atami slammed the brakes, sending the attacker sliding forward while still clinging to the metal frame. The man grabbed a hook and climbed back up, smashing the windshield, but Atami swerved sharply, throwing him into Dragunov's van, where he was crushed. The chase continued. Atami rammed another vehicle, causing one motorcycle to explode in flames. Another attacker climbed onto the truck and struck Atami, nearly knocking him unconscious. Atami grabbed a metal rod and jammed it into the motorcycle's wheel, sending the bike flying through the air before it exploded. Atami hooked another soldier with a chain and dragged him inside the truck, then hurled him back out. As Atami pulled the chain free, the man resisted, and the tension snapped violently, tearing his head clean off. Dragunov lit a bottle of fire and hurled it onto the wooden logs in Atami's truck, setting them ablaze. In response, Atami threw the body of a dead soldier, rigged with explosives, into Dragunov's van. Dragunov leapt clear just before the vehicle detonated in a massive explosion. Atami drove off the road and into the thick brush, using the terrain to smother the flames spreading across the logs. From afar, Dragunov ordered air support. Atami stepped out of the truck to put out the remaining fire, pouring water directly into the overheated engine. Exhausted, he sat down and calmly pressed the metal bullet lodged in his cheek back into place. Moments later, as two aircraft closed in, Atami grabbed his dog, climbed back into the truck, and drove on. The plane swooped low and opened fire. Atami spotted a nearby building and steered straight into it as bullets tore through the walls. He ripped loose wooden boards and used them as a shield, holding them up against the incoming fire. The aircraft gained altitude, then turned back and dropped bombs toward the structure. Atami drove out just in time. Atami veered into dense woodland, where the aircraft could not easily maneuver. One pilot narrowed his approach and forced his way in, firing again. Atami slammed the brakes, causing the plane's wing to clip the truck. The aircraft spiraled out of control and exploded. Atami scanned the sky for the second plane but saw nothing. He drove out cautiously, still searching. Suddenly, the remaining aircraft burst upward from below a cliff and opened fire. Its ammunition ran dry. Desperate, the pilot dove straight at Atami. Atami fired at a rope holding the logs, sending 3 massive logs sliding forward. The aircraft skimmed over the truck, struck the logs, and detonated in a fiery blast. Atami stepped out to secure the logs, but the pilot survived the crash and fired at him. Atami advanced, but the roar of another plane echoed overhead. He retreated, pulled the logs back into place, and drove on as bombs rained down. One explosion sent the truck and Atami plunging off a cliff into the ocean. Underwater, Atami freed his dog and swam desperately to release the rope binding the logs. His strength faded, and he began to sink, but a floating log carried him back to the surface. Dragunov sent a boat to search for the body, but nothing was found. He knew Atami was still alive. Atami gathered what remained of his home, bound the logs together into a crude raft, and sailed back to shore. There, he stumbled upon an abandoned tank. At the border, Dragunov and his men were waiting. Atami poured fuel into his mouth and expelled it through a hose, forcing the tank forward as soldiers fired relentlessly. He used a cache of dynamite to launch the tank over the Soviet border checkpoint. The tank was destroyed in the blast, leaving Atami gravely wounded. He drove a knife blade deep into his injured flesh, then released his dog, sending it away. As he emerged, Dragunov approached and aimed his weapon. Before he could kill him, KGB agents arrived and ordered that Atami be taken alive. Dragunov dragged Atami across the ground and knocked him unconscious. Atami awoke aboard a train bound for Siberia. He was brutally tortured with electric lashes until Dragunov ordered the guards to leave. Alone with him, Dragunov beat him with a stick and finally spoke of his crimes. He admitted to killing countless women and children, remembering none of them, except one boy who tried to become the man of his family. That boy had nearly taken his eye with a knife. The child had tried to save his little brother and mother, but they were butchered with an iron shovel. Dragunov said that boy lit a fire in him, and now he intended to extinguish it. He called Atami a mistake, a byproduct, a weed in his field. He promised that Siberia would strip him of everything, even his memory, and that the logs of his house would be burned and buried beneath frozen ground like his family. Realizing he was face to face with his family's killer, Atami erupted in rage. He struggled violently, screaming as his wounds tore open and blood poured down. The iron restraints ripped free from the wood, and he collapsed to the floor. Guards heard the noise and peered through the slot, seeing him motionless. They decided who would enter. As one stepped inside, Atami tore the knife from his own flesh. A gunshot echoed. The second guard hesitated, then heard a knock. Looking through the slot, he saw his partner standing there and nodded. When he opened the door, the body fell forward, and Atami emerged. The guard leapt from the moving train as Atami stood drenched in blood, pulling his hair back, unstoppable. Meanwhile, Dragunov was dining with senior KGB officers. He demanded what he had been promised, saying he wanted to leave immediately. The KGB leader told him he would receive it, but insisted they celebrate first. Elsewhere on the train, Atami armed himself with a pickaxe and slipped into another car. He checked through the slot and saw soldiers asleep inside. He quietly opened the door and entered, moving carefully between them without making a sound. One man stirred, forcing Atami to retreat into the next section. More soldiers slept there. As a guard entered, Atami hurled the pickaxe, killing him instantly. He continued forward, but the train jolted, knocking a bottle from a bunk onto the floor. With no other path, Atami stepped onto the broken glass. A soldier woke up. Atami lifted the bed frame and stabbed him repeatedly, but blood dripped onto the man sleeping below. Atami dropped to the floor and crawled across the shattered glass. His hand snapped into a rat trap, and the sound alerted another soldier as blood dripped down. Atami tore free, grabbed the pickaxe, escaped the section, and hooked the door shut. The next car was packed with soldiers. Atami climbed upward, but struck a barrier and fell into a third section. The men opened fire. Believing him dead, they lowered their weapons, but Atami rose and returned fire, killing them all. Hearing the gunshots, Dragunov stepped out to investigate. He quickly unhooked the train, separating his section from the cars holding Atami, then entered the dining. One of the men at the table began shaking, blood pooling in his hands. Dragunov shot every officer in the room, including the leader. Even after the man tried to offer him a briefcase full of money, Atami discovered a ballistic missile on board the train. He activated it and used its thrust to propel the detached cars forward, closing the distance to Dragunov. Soldiers rushed out to assess the damage, only to be engulfed by the missile's flames as it roared past them. Warning lights flashed as Atami reached Dragunov's car. He smashed through the door and attacked. The two men fought violently, trading blows. Dragunov gained the advantage, pinning Atami with a chair and slamming his head into the table until he weakened. Dragunov grabbed the briefcase and prepared to leave, but Atami surged back to his feet. They crashed into the wash area, stabbing at each other with cutlery. Dragunov dragged Atami to the floor and beat his face with a metal rod. To confirm his cruelty, he seized a shovel and struck Atami hard, revealing himself as the man who murdered Atami's family. Summoning his remaining strength, Atami detached the still-active missile from the train and launched it directly at Dragunov. He then pulled the brake on the detached cars, stopping safely as the missile struck Dragunov and exploded. The blast shook the entire area, but Atami survived. With his family finally avenged, Atami gathered the logs from the detached train and used it to carry them back across the Finnish border. He presented his passport to a border soldier. After confirming his rank, the soldier stood and saluted. Back in Finland, Atami began rebuilding his home. Several Finnish men approached, and he reached for his axe, ready to defend himself. Instead, they offered their help. In silence, Atami accepted, honoring his family as they rebuilt together. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more movie recaps. Thanks for watching.